Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Ewood Park. Happy Easter, happy Good Friday. The Norwich City team news is out. Some headlines for you. Onel Hernandez returns. Liam Gibbs starts. Kenny McLean is out with injury. More on that in just a second. Norwich City line up like this. Gunning goal, Aarons, Hanley, Gibson and Yanulis as the back four. A midfield two of Sarah and Sorensen. Hernandez, Gibbs in the 10, as we understand it, with Marquinhos and Josh Sargent up front. The Norwich bench, Tim Krul and John Bamidele, Adam Ida, Sam McCallum, Christos Solis, Temu Pukki and Abu Kamara. Just to bring you those headlines again, Onel Hernandez returns from injury to start. Liam Gibbs also starts. And Kenny McLean out with an injury. We believe that is a knee injury. And we believe, Paddy, it's likely to keep him out of the rest of the season. I don't know if I want to broaden out any further. With the caveat, of course, that there could be a playoff campaign for that, which I think there may be some hope that he would return in those circumstances. Today, of course, is a big day, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But, Paddy, just your reflection on that team news. Some really interesting selection choices in there. But let's start with Kenny McLean and that injury. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, basically, Connor, as you say, knee ligament damage. Led to believe not the knee. If people cast their minds back, he missed Scotland's Euros, didn't he? He got injured. I think it was the second championship title winning season. It might have been the final day, wasn't it? At Barnsley, yeah. Did his knee ligaments that day. It's not the same knee, led to believe that there's a confidence they won't need to go down the surgical route, which does shorten the timeline to a degree. But you're right, yeah, the sense seems to be we won't see him again unless Norwich go very deep into a playoff campaign. Whether you believe that's likely or not, depends on how optimistic you are. When did he do it? Towards the end of last weekend's game against Sheffield United. Apparently left Carrow Road, led to believe, with his knee in a protective brace. They've obviously looked in the intervening period, the medical sports science teams. I'm sure that they've probably gone and got him checked out by specialists as well. And that is where we're at with Kenny McLean. So MCL ligament damage, not surgery, but potentially season ending. And obviously it's another blow following on from Kieran Dowell, and one or two others. But, you know, the positive maybe is that Liam Gibbs comes into the team. And
we're expecting that to be in a 10 role as well, aren't we? Not in a deeper sort of central midfield role. We're expecting the two to be Sarah and Sorensen and Liam Gibbs in the 10.
Yeah, flanked by Marquinhos and Onel Hernandez. And Onel is maybe the upside of the injury discussion, because, you were down there on Wednesday, Connor, spoke to David Wagner. I got the sense from his comments that maybe it was after Easter we'd see Onel. He had this ankle ligament issue himself. He'd gone and seen a specialist. I think he's missed 3 or 4, I'm going to say, maybe slightly less games. But he's clearly available, clearly responded well. And he starts today in what feels a very progressive attacking 3 behind Josh Sargent in Marquinhos, Gibbs, and obviously Onel. You know, there's plenty of pace there and plenty of threat on the counter if it plays into that type of game where Blackburn look to dominate the ball and the territory, and Norwich can maybe hit them on the counter. And obviously for me, post the news on Temu Pukki, I was very interested to see, did that mean that we're now moving on and to a world after Temu Pukki in terms of the team selection today? And I think we've got our answer. You know, Josh Sargent starts, Adam either comes out the side. That's very much a signal for me that the dial has turned. And of course, Temu, I'm sure, will get his opportunities between now and the end of the season. And should they fall short in the playoffs, I'm sure that Blackpool final day at Carrow Road would be almost a Temu Pukki Appreciation Society day. But in the here and now, while they've still got a live chance, it feels like Wagner has made his decision now. And Temu Pukki in the last few games, I don't think has really merited starting ahead of Sargent or Ida, and that's how David Wagner sees it. So really interesting, team. But the headline is, McLean out, Hernandez in, Gibbs in the 10, and Sargent leading the line.
Yeah, and just to reiterate for those joining us a little bit later, we're expecting Kenny McLean to be ruled out, certainly for the rest of the traditional season. Obviously, there could be, depending on how full your glass is, and maybe we'll move on to this in a moment, there could be a playoff campaign with at least 2 more games to come at the end of that, which I think the expectation would be that Kenny McLean could well return for that. But just that headline news, Kenny McLean out with a knee injury for this afternoon's game, and also for what we believe to be the rest of the season. Onel Hernandez back, which is a big boost for Norwich City. As you said, David Wagner, speaking on Wednesday, described it as him being doubtful. I must admit, I was slightly surprised there was no mention of Kenny McLean in that press conference. I think we got whispers at the start of the week that it may be the case that there was a knee injury. So perhaps not particularly surprising to see him miss out. Liam Gibbs in the 10 is a really interesting one. But I guess, Paddy, all of this is geared towards being a little bit more effective and a little bit more fluid from an attacking perspective. David Wagner spoke about that at length on Wednesday as well. 2 points in the last 4 games, but also is it only 1 goal, isn't it, as well? So that need for a little bit more productivity in the front end of the pitch probably answers why we're seeing changes in those areas. Onel Hernandez, probably someone who isn't going to be able to finish the game this afternoon, but if he can just inject a little bit more spark into their attack, that obviously leads to a victory here today, that will be job done for you.
Yeah, it's a good point on Onel. Yeah, I mean, that was intimated to me as well that I started him today. You are pretty much saying he'll go maybe an hour, maybe slightly longer. And then I'm just looking over my shoulder.
What would be interesting, sorry, just cut across, is then obviously the game on Monday. Is he then capable to play in that one, or will we expect to see him play a bit more of a withdrawn role, maybe from the bench or in the squad at all, because of how close these games are together?
Well, absolutely, yeah. But I think in the here and now, given the urgency to get a result today, I'm sure David Wagner will speak to him obviously after the game more broadly about the Rotherham aspect of his approach. But in the here and now, it's this team, he believes, from the available resource, is the best equipped to get him a result here today against a Rovers who harbour the same, end goal, i.e. Wembley playoff final, Premier League promotion. So, that was an interesting chat I thought you had with David about, the last 3 or 4 games and maybe how they've tried to progress the ball. And, it's a moot point now, but he talked about Kenny McLean in the last 2 or 3 games, hadn't really, he felt, dropped into that space between the 2 centre-backs to try and build the play. And he certainly won't be doing that today. So, Azara and Sorensen pivot, I can see a bit more control and a bit more of a desire to maybe build through the thirds. But what really excites me today is, we're not seeing Gibbs, unless I'm wrong, I don't recall him starting a game for Norwich senior level in a 10. He might have gravitated into those areas of the pitch, but, we tended to see him in a more deeper position. It was interesting when David Wagner was asked about Liam Gibbs earlier in the season. He didn't think he had the physicality at this stage of his career to play in the 6. But by the same token, he clearly felt there was a player there of some ability and some talent, and he gets a real good opportunity today. And I just hope the game opens up as David Wagner and his coaches maybe are envisaging, which is it might well be can Norwich transition well, which we saw at Preston and Coventry in the best periods of the David Wagner era so far, when there's space on the counter to exploit if you've got players with pace and creativity. And of course, Kieran Dowell was the kind of head on a stick kind of ability to manipulate the ball and get release on Onel or release on McInnes. Today, maybe the onus is on Gibbs to do it. And yes, I know it's all about the here and now, but I know there's a lot of Norwich fans who have been crying out to see Liam Gibbs start a game for Norwich now. And with one eye to the future, it'd be lovely for him to come in and really put his personality on it and show what he's all about and really enjoy it against a very good championship opponent. And I think if that happened today, irrespective of the result, we get a bit more of a sample of what a David Wagner team looks like next season, and hopefully the influence of a Liam Gibbs within that, because there's no doubt, I think, there's a player there who could really add a different dimension to what we've seen, which, let's be honest, you quoted the stats there, 2 points from the last 4, 1 goal scored, just purely in performance levels, so stodgy, so predictable, so lethargic and tired. We need to see something a bit different today, a bit more energy and a bit more intent. And whether by accident or whether by design, that team selection today does feel like a bit of a shake-up. So let's see if that transpires into a more energetic performance.
Yeah, and Liam Gibbs, of course, did play Ipswich Town as in a bit more of an advanced role. It wasn't until Norwich that he came back and started to play in perhaps a little bit more of a deeper midfield role. I spoke to him, would have been about this time last year, actually, and he kind of spoke about that transition into that deeper midfield role. And I think Darren Eady has said before that he feels he could play a little bit more advanced. So it's going to be interesting to see that tested this afternoon. Just to bring you the Blackburn Rovers team, the headline news, I suppose, one change is that Brereton Diaz starts for them this afternoon. He's missed the last few games through injury. I think he was on the bench for their defeat at Birmingham last weekend. They've got Pearce in goal, Rankin Costello, Carter, Hyam and Pickering as their back 4. Morton and Travis is their midfield 2. Hedges on the right, Brereton Diaz on the left with Schmodox behind Gallagher. Their subs bench, Kaminski, Britton, Dolan, Sorba Thomas, Scott Wharton, Jake Garrett and Adam Wharton. That makes up their team. Paddy, as we referenced, it's a big day. If anyone's caught me kind of glancing up here, it's because we've got a few TV screens just above our heads here on the roof that are showing the the Luton-Millwall game, which I think my eyesight's not the best, but I think that still says 0-0. So obviously there is an opportunity for Norwich, if they can win here this afternoon, to close at the moment what is a 4-point gap. Millwall's draw would make it a 5-point gap to them, but certainly in relation purely to Blackburn, a 4-point gap or 1-point gap. Obviously Blackburn have a game in hand. You have to think, and I think David Wagner kind of conceded this to an extent, defeat here, that would move Blackburn 7 points ahead of Norwich. With 6 left, that seems like a pretty insurmountable total to me, at least. It is a big, big day for Norwich City and their playoff hopes. It feels like one way or the other, we could either have our answer as to whether we're going to be in a playoff race for the final 6 games, or whether this is just going to be a challenge that is beyond them come full time.
I mean, I can't remember this season now 190 minutes that could radically transform the kind of potential or where the horizon line is between now and the end of the season. As you rightly say, you frame it in that way. It's either 1 point behind Blackburn or 7 points behind. I don't know how Millwall are playing out at the minute and Luton, but they're really, you look at it now, it's only really the 5th and 6th I think that Norwich can conceivably catch. And if that was to go against them today, this result, then I think that's probably it, definitively, really. So, as David said, if it goes the other way, and of course, why wouldn't he want to hype up the positive element of the equation, then you bounce into Carrow Road, Rotherham on Monday, and you really feel it is possible. It is still tangibly within their grasp. So, we don't want to overhype it, but this season probably does come down to this 90 minutes today. It's as big as that. And, we're looking out at the Ewood Park pitch. It's bathed in sunshine. It's a glorious day for playing football. And, when you get to this, we drove in now and listening to the radio, and Sheffield United's manager, Paul Heckingbottom, talking about the intensity levels at this stage of the season. It feels like it's all or nothing, and you have to deliver. And this is where Norwich find themselves now. Their margin for error is gone based on what they haven't done in the last 4 games. If they don't perform today, and by that's probably getting the win today here, then it's probably gone. So if you're the most experienced player, if you're a Tim Krul or a Grant Hanley, or even if you're a Liam Gibbs, you know what's on the line today. It shouldn't need David Wagner to go in there and thump and motivate these players. They know that essentially the season is in the palm of their hands today, and if they don't perform, then it's gone, and then we'll deal with the recriminations thereafter. So that's how high the stakes are today.
Yeah, and just to bring you the championship tables, it looks like they're in the final 10 minutes at the Den between Millwall and Luton, 0-0 as that says. That puts them on 62 points in 5th. That's 5 points ahead of Norwich City. Blackburn obviously currently on 61 points, 4 points ahead prior to kick-off. One other game to take note of that's happening as we speak is West Brom. They're away at Rotherham United. They did take the lead for a swift penalty in the first half, but good old Jordan Hugill has fired an equaliser in for them. Them, of course, fighting for their lives and come to Carrow Road on Easter Monday. As that stands, that would put West Brom level on points with Norwich City, alongside Coventry, who are also level on points and are playing Swansea this afternoon. So a big decisive day in terms of the playoff picture, obviously. As this result stands, if Burnley win this evening against Middlesbrough, they can secure promotion to the Premier League. So we're getting into that stage of the season where there's plenty of permutations and plenty of things to be aware of. But certainly from Norwich City's perspective today, it does feel like only a win will do against this Blackburn side, because a 4-point cushion. Blackburn, as we said, have a game in hand. That feels potentially damaging, really, in terms of Norwich City's pursuit of them. 1 point, and it is, as David Wagner would say, game on. So, Paddy, that leads us nicely to come to you and how you see this game going. You've seen the selection, you've seen what both teams have gone with. How do you expect this game to play out? And let's have your prediction thrown on the end as well.
Well, do you know what? Now, I mean, I've seen a few comments, and that is, again, maybe forced, but it feels something different to what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 games from Norwich. And there's an intent in that 11, and if they're arranged as we're led to believe they are, then there's clearly a desire to grab this game by the throat of the neck. So, and I just think, as much as we're hyping up Blackburn are in a similar situation, they've faltered a little bit of late if you look at their results, and they will know, conversely, that this is an opportunity for them to really put Norwich out of the race today, rather than it goes the other way. But if it goes the other way and Norwich get themselves in front, or the game's level going into the second half, maybe there'll be an edginess in this home crowd, and that'll transmit itself to these players. They're coming off the back of a poor result. I think they got beat at Birmingham, didn't they? So, John Dahl-Thomason, their manager, I saw him sort of appealing generally for a bit of calm and composure. But, if that's under the surface and Norwich can set their stall out and exploit that, then we all know there's ability in this Norwich squad. We've seen it periodically and not enough, and certainly not consistently. But if they can rouse themselves for all the reasons we've already stated today, that it's now or never, then maybe there's a bit more mileage left in this season. So while the sun's shining, let's be positive. I'm going to say 2-1 Norwich.
I'm not. Sorry about that. Blackburn have such a good home record here. I think 13 of their 19 wins have come at home. They've got, I think, the second best home record in the entire championship. They've taken 16 points here from their last 6 games. But if you want some optimism from me, Norwich City have won the last 4 games that they've come here. So there you go. Blackburn, although have, of course, beaten them twice in league and cup so far this season. So where does that leave us? And I think there are definitely some positive cases to be made for that starting lineup, particularly from an attacking perspective. And there's a big goal. Sorry to just cut across myself. Jordan Hugill has scored again for Rotherham United. They now lead West Brom 2-1 at the New York Stadium, which is a massive goal for Norwich City, I have to say, in terms of keeping West Brom at bay. 50 minutes played in that game. But sadly, I do feel that this Norwich City team, just on the evidence of this season, when faced with adversity, have really struggled to overcome it, and therefore I'm probably struggling to see them come out with a win this afternoon. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, I think, which I don't really think does anything for either side. Probably slightly better for Blackburn with that game in hand, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. There we go. Big afternoon of action ahead. As Paddy said earlier, we don't need to overhype it. It sells itself. You can join us across the Pinken platforms for full coverage, analysis and reaction to this game on this Good Friday. Going to be absolutely fascinating to see how it transpires. And this is also very true from Mark. I'm hoping for a bit of reverse psychology, which Paddy's tried, and now I'm going to see it and see if that has any kind of effect. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Big afternoon in store.